One thing that the War Refugee Board does is bring in 982 refugees to a camp, Fort Ontario in Oswego, New York. You're seeing here Universal newsreel footage of refugees arriving in this camp in Oswego, New York in August of 1944. These are refugees who had been in Italy and are brought over by the War Refugee Board outside of the immigration quota system. They're not admitted as immigrants. They're held as guests. And what you see here is a boy on one side of the fence at Fort Ontario talking to residents of Oswego on the other side of the fence. All 982 had to sign papers that said that they would go back to Europe when the war is over. But this is the only instance during this period, during the Nazi period, where the US government brings over a mass of refugees outside of the immigration quota system. They hold them at this camp behind barbed wire fences, and they hold them until February of 1946, until well after the war ends. Harry Truman is president by that time and says, we can't send these people back. And ultimately they are admitted to the United States as immigrants. This is a piece of the fence from Oswego that's been lent to us for the exhibition, a piece of the fence, that's the barbed wire fence that surrounded those refugees at Fort Ontario. They published their own newspaper called the Ontario Chronicle, and what you're seeing here is a cartoon from the Ontario Chronicle showing a before and after, the excitement of the refugees as they arrived in New York Harbor, seeing the Statue of Liberty on August 5th, 1944. And 1 year later, they're still held behind this barbed wire fence, and the Statue of Liberty, or the promise of liberty, seems to be at such a distance. This is an illustration that appeared in their own newspaper, the Ontario Chronicle, in August of 1945, drawn by one of the refugees, Max Sipser. And again, this speaks to that contrast that we want to get at the exhibition between the promise of liberty, the idea of America as a land of refuge, and the political realities on the ground that made it so difficult for Americans to make good on that promise.